Right, so good morning everyone. Where's the passion? Where's the love? Not feeling it in Durban today. Is it the weather? It probably is the weather. Just to make you feel better, Joburg has worse weather. So you can, as always, I think Durban has better weather. So you do normally feel a bit better if you have better weather than what we do. But this morning was just an absolute, flying in from Johannesburg was just, the weather was just, I don't know how to describe it, but just not a good day to be doing work. Okay, anyway, so this is the Gauteng Novo Course, and today is the launch session for the Gauteng Novo Course. I have an attendance register here in the front, which I am going to circulate. There we go. So I guess we can make it pass out this way and eventually let it come up to the front. All right, so you're all here today for the launch session, and maybe at a high level, just to establish what we would like to achieve at this launch session. We'd basically like to use this opportunity to provide you with important information about the course, the structure of the course. I've no doubt in my mind that in your evaluation up to this point, you must have looked at the details, or looked at a lot of the details as to what exactly this entails, what the June ITC entails. So I think some of the things I will say today you have contemplated, and I suspect you have thought about, but you will hear it again, I guess, for confirmation. And I also suspect that you will pick up a couple of other important points. All right, so it is an information session, and it is planning and talking about the way forward. But it's particularly a very important session, because we all know that this June sitting is written for the first time in the history of this profession. We've never had this June sitting before. We've never had 2 months before a sitting to prepare for that. We've always had the single sitting, QE1, and that has always been CTA, you know, a full preparation of 1 year, followed by a month or two, and then writing the exam. But this is unique. This is 2 months. Have I got my calculations correct? You can audit me here. You're all auditors. You agree with me. It is 2 months. Today is the 20th of April, and we're saying roughly, not roughly, it is the 19th and 20th of June. So that makes this different. Okay? And if I was in your position, when I'd woken up this morning, or coming up to this point, I would be hoping to walk out of today's session knowing this is, because this is new and it's different and it's never been done before, how do I do it? How do I prepare for this course? I was chatting to one of the providers of the other program as well, because there is more than just one program that's providing this course, and there is this general concurrence with the other guys as well, that we need to give this guidance. And look, for us it's new territory as well, but I think if we apply our minds, we have a model, and we've thought about this model intensely, and I think that's the answer. That's why you're here today, to get a sense of how do you prepare for this exam in 2 months. Don't think, let's just look at the different probabilities. Is it doing theory? Is it just doing questions? Is it doing absolutely nothing? When do I start? Okay, you see what I'm talking about. all these different things because it's quite a lot. It's different and it's unique. But having said that, I'm sure that many of you have come to the realization that this is good. What I'm trying to say is writing it as early as possible. Look, I know the fact of writing it again, that's not a nice feeling. Okay, that's not nice. But the fact that I had a girl the other day, it wasn't the other day, it was on Thursday, so that was 2 days ago. And she had written her 5 attempts. But as you know, or some of you would know, Saika changed that to, because of the 2 sittings a year, she got 1 more attempt, the 6th attempt. And she said that's a miracle. She said that when I met her and she came to see my office, the type of the motivation I knew from the outset when she stepped into my office, this girl's going to do well. Because she was confident, she was motivated, she wanted this. I actually didn't do much talking. Afterwards I said, I don't know why you came to see me. Because you've done all the thinking. She said, I came to confirm that I was thinking in the right way. And she was, in my opinion. So, this, look, it's not, we say, my colleague Diewald is good at saying this, that it's not nice to be here, right? But we have to get over it. We have to move forward. This time round, we don't have a lot of time to get over it. Okay, I guess in the previous structure there was still time. You could sort of go through the stages. 1 month, go to Joe Pools, jump up and down a couple of times, go through it, okay, and go through the process. But now we've got 2 months, and that's all we have to prep for this. And we're going to do it. We know we're going to do it. Okay, so having said all of those wonderful things, that's why we're here today. All right. Having fun and engaged, my pointer today. All right, so let's move on to our next slide. I am feeling. Have you located the slides? It's in your files, hey folks? It's in your files, it's in your material. The first section of your file, you have the launch slides there. So, I'm feeling a couple of things. And I think by this stage, the thing is, there isn't a lot of time to feel these things, like despondent and angry. Okay? If you are this afternoon, run to the beach, get energy, and come back. All right? Uncertain and confused, light your shisha pipe outside there after this lecture, get clarity, and move on. We don't have a lot of time to do this. Are you anxious to start studying again? Can I feel it? Okay? Yes. All right, that's it. That's the kind of responses we're looking for. All right? Am I uncertain or unsure about how and when to start? I think that's why you're here, and that's linked to the last one. Scared and nervous because of the short space in time. I think those are the kind of themes, the sense I've been getting from many candidates across the country, that it's about that getting that direction. What do I do to prepare for this course? I can't redo my CPA in 2 months. So what do I do? We're going to get answers to that today. All right. So what are the objectives of the Novo course? One of the aspects I do want to give you confirmation, and this is confirmation. I know some others, these type of discussions are happening. Is this a board course again? Is this the Gauteng board course or the board course you did, or the UCT Cape Town board course? Is this the board course again? And I think the answer to that question is it can't be the board course again. Why? Because in the life cycle of preparation, you did the board course, you've been there, you've done that. You did your CTA, you did the board course. This needs to be something different. You are here for a different experience. And that's the point that us, or we at the office up in Johannesburg have been making. We want to focus on the skills, right? Saika has moved towards pervasive skills. Saika talks a lot about pervasive skills. Today I will touch on some of those skills. But we need to move towards the skills involved in answering some of the questions, or almost all of the questions. This is a skills-based course. It's not going to have tax updates. It doesn't need to have tax updates. The syllabus is still the same. All right? It's not going to have new accounting IFRSs. It's not a knowledge-based course. So we need to focus on the discipline involved in approaching this ITC and approach it from the angle that we want to tackle the skills that we can improve. Okay. All right. So essentially, that is the objective of this course. Yes, skills are illustrated through content, so it will give us an excellent opportunity to revise some of the technical, like for example, in accounting, the 4 lecture modules in accounting are broken up. The underlying is 4 technical topics. All right, and you would have seen that in your accounting introduction document. Lecture 1, using groups as a vehicle to illustrate skills in group statements. Okay? Then we have an assets integrated session. Then we have an integrated questions session. So yes, underlying, there is going to be technical that needs to be revised. But we must address the skills aspect of this. And ultimately, like I said to you, for me the most important thing is, if I was in your place and I woke up this morning, I would hope to be leaving here today with a structured approach and planning your approach for the ITC. All right. So some more objectives here of the course. I don't think we need to go through those line for line. If you do see someone that sparks a thought or something that sparks a thought, just shout, put up your hand. All right. Have I made the good choice or the right choice? Very quickly, I have no doubt in my mind that you've made the right choice. I think one of the important things I do want to say is that, and I think we mentioned it before as well, the folks that are involved in this course are generally all lecturers who have marked, who have umpired in the ITC. Let me just go through the list. Prof. Ben has umpired. Okay, and we said this before. Umpire is somebody that runs the marking, the entire marking of a question or questions. So Prof. Ben has umpired. I've umpired the accounting 100 marks question this year and the tax 10 marks question, the 10 marks accounting in the tax. Theobald has been involved, Maria has been involved, Jonathan is marked. All of us have been involved in some or other form. So what we're saying and what we're trying to say, and we've said it many times before, is real. It's contextualized. So listen attentively. Listen very attentively, because you pick up on these things quite often. The girl that came to see me on Thursday, we were looking at her script, and I asked her, she had a sentence in her solution, in the accounting solution, and I asked her, why did you write that sentence? And she didn't have an answer for me. And I said, but can you see that this sentence did not score you a mark? And I said that we did that exercise, need to go and understand, why did that sentence not score you a mark? Because you, when you went into the exam, did you not write down that sentence with the intention to earn a mark? Why else would you have written it? Do you agree, sir? Exactly. So one needs to question, and this is, listen attentively, but be quite skeptical in your analysis to understand why something was worth a mark and why something was not worth a mark. All right, good. Maybe just quickly some admin, and I'm going through the admin and that sort of stuff quite quickly. So you've located the timetable in your file. Everyone seen that? Okay, so the timetable's in the file and also on the website. Then there's also a study program or a day-to-day planner that's also in your file and on the website. Everyone here has got course materials, and there's contact details for the people up on our side for any admin issues. Okay, very good. Right, let's move on to this slide. The slide that shows competency areas with the weighting, okay, and the different weightings in the ITC of January. All right, let me ask you a question. In January, were you waiting for the accounting, financial accounting? Okay, because it wasn't in paper 1. Well, 10 marks, paper 1. Remember that? Let's go back in time. 10 marks in paper 1. All right? There was nothing in paper 2, nothing in paper 3, and then when everyone had done paper 3, just almost take yourself back into time in that lunch period. You probably were convinced that there must be some accounting in this exam, right? And it was paper 4. Okay, now in total there was 110 marks of financial accounting, right? In terms of the structure of the ITC in January, SAICA published this table to say that the accounting and external reporting would be between 100 and 120 marks. So it was 110 marks. Okay? So it was actually spot on. It was down from the years before. I don't know if you picked that up from discussions or through your CPA. In the past it was 140 odd marks, so it was down. It was also one single question on accounting. Okay? So it was not integrated. The only integration was the integration with tax, which I'll talk about later, that's 10 marks. But it was one standalone question. Do I think we will see the same scenario again? I think yes, because I can't think of reasons whilst marking and umpiring to suggest that it did not work. So one single accounting question, 100 marks, we can probably see it again. We may see 2 accounting questions, etc. All right. The other interesting observation on the financial accounting was the fact that many people said it was one topic. Yeah? You remember that? What was the topic? Group statements. All right. And many people then said, but it was just one topic. Group statements. There was no leases, none of those other topics. What about, how did SAICA just test one topic? Now you need to understand the psychology here. SAICA says, or I think what SAICA says in their mind, is that all of those topics have been assessed in CTA in the past, but specifically in CTA. Do we need to reassess all of the topics? No. But we can choose one topic. What is SAICA trying to assess? This is the important question. They're trying to assess skills in an accounting question. So they chose group statements as a vehicle to test those skills. What are those skills? Let me give you those skills. Calculation. Could you calculate something? Part A of the financial accounting question. Calculate the carrying amount. Could you calculate it? Could you calculate something critically? Did you have clarity in your mind to perform that calculation? Okay? The ability to communicate, to argue, to recommend an appropriate accounting treatment. Part B1, discuss whether someone controls the other entity. There's your theory. Okay? Part D2, recognition and measurement of the joint venture. Trying to think here, did we have journal entries? Oh, we did. We had journal entries, part B was journal entries. Now, if you just step back, and we can do this exercise, think about all the different type of questions you can get in accounting. Was it in that exam for 100 marks? The answer is yes. Okay? So, what I'm trying to get to here is that knowledge is important. But how you apply that knowledge, the skill of applying it, is the more important part. Because you all have the knowledge. We're going to get to the gap analysis shortly. We'll talk about that. But no doubt in my mind that you have the knowledge. Just you've done 4 years plus CGA. You've studied for the QE. The knowledge must be there. It can't just disappear. You can go to Joe Cool's last 25 times. It doesn't mean the knowledge is going to disappear. It'll still be there. All right. It might be a bit rusty, but it's still there. So, I worked through those university comments. That was part of my job as the umpire of that question, to work through the university comments. I think it was about 45 pages of those comments. Comments by comment. And yes, those comments are published or will be published in CICA's document. Many universities talked about their group statements as being a single vehicle. It chose one narrow part of the syllabus. What if you can't do groups? Okay? Now, the point I want to get to is, I think we are probably going to see more like this. We're probably going to see leases, and then you can't say, I can't do leases. Okay? It's how you respond to that, because the knowledge must be there. At this stage of your life, it must be there. Okay. Then let's run through some of these other ones. We saw strategy, risk management, and governance. That 45 marks question with that transport company. It was something, your concerns that you have with the governance of the company. Okay, the auditing guys will pick up more on that. So that was there. Audit insurance, yes, we had a proper auditing question. The tax question. Tax question, which was question 1, was the 10 marks financial accounting. Now this was very interesting. The average of this question, and it's published, so I'm not actually talking unpublished numbers here. The average of this question was low. It wasn't the 65% that we've seen sometimes before. Okay? The average for this question was low. It's described by the tax academics to be a question that is different. Right? But what I've seen is that in the financial accounting, it was that 10 marks financial accounting, it was almost, it wasn't even answered in some instances. Now, let's do a very simple test here. Very, very simple test. If we have an asset, that was deferred tax. If we have an asset, it was an office building, for which you receive no tax allowances. Okay? You guys with me? An office building for which you receive no tax allowances. What amount would you expect to see in the deferred tax balance column for that asset? What would you expect to see? Office building, no allowances. Add one more piece of information on the cost model. We need 3 pieces of information. Office building, no allowances on the cost model. What would you expect to see in the deferred tax column? In your assets and liabilities method, what would you expect to see in that column? Would you expect to see 0? Okay? Or permanent difference? Same thing. zero or permanent difference? Or would you expect to see a temporary difference multiplied by 28% and a month? Okay, now, I know you know the answer. I could see you guys are whispering it. It's permanent. The office building with no allowances. Initial recognition, IS 12 paragraph 15, saying on initial recognition, no allowances. You agree with me? You know what I'm talking about, right? So you know what I'm talking about? Exactly. So the ultimate impact would be zero. Right. Now that is what that question was. There was an office building with no allowances carried on the cost model. And you had to say what was the default tax implication for that and explain it. Exemption applies straight out, zero carrying amount. You had to then explain, it wanted you to explain, using the assets and liabilities method also, why you use that carrying amount. Now guys, why did you use that carrying amount? Accounting says cost was at the cost date. Thou shalt initially measure office building, PP, investment property at cost. That's it. 1 mark. Okay? And the initial recognition exemption applied because of IS 12 paragraph 15. And that would explain why your tax base and your temporary difference, why those two columns were forced balance, had exempt, and why you had a carrying amount of zero. That's what it was. And I remember sitting down on several occasions looking at that question and saying, how would the candidate have performed if someone had asked them this question that I've asked outside the exam situation? And I feel like all of you would say to me, exempt. Which means you have the knowledge. Do you understand see where I'm going with this? But what happened? When the scenario changed and the information got together, the application of that concept, that's where you struggle with. That's what you struggle with. The average for that 10 marks, financial accounting, was this 3. Okay? You didn't even have to answer the tax exempt to anything to get 3 marks. If you just explain the carrying amount of the asset, there was 3 marks. But the average was 3. So clearly there is a skill involved in thinking about these things. And that's what we need to try and get to. Because the dynamics change when something that is taken simple is put into, I think, the exam situation. The dynamics change, and the way it's applied, the way you need to apply, obviously requires a different skill. Okay, then we talk about financial management and management decision making and control. Yes, we had those 2 questions. I think one was a standard costing question. And the finance guys will pick up on that in more detail. Then we had ethics. And then and I know I've made this point, I have made this point before, effective and efficient communication. Look at that. How many marks in that far right column? 21. 21 marks out of 400. Okay? Which is 6% of the exam. Right. We can do a quick test here. You probably have obtained your final exam paper. So you know what your final mark was. Were you 6 or 7% short? Okay, some of you probably. That's efficient and effective communication. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that today again. 21 marks, that's a lot of marks. That one can, and you can get those marks. It's not like it's almost impossible to get those marks. All right, moving on to the next slide. How does this course ensure coverage of the CICA competency framework exercise? Okay, so what we thought we would just want to do is link these competency areas 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 just show you that they are covered in the 4 disciplines. You know about the whole structure, etc., but they're covered in the 4 disciplines, so we will deal with them in the different disciplines and make sure that ultimately you've got coverage for all of those competency areas. Right. This slide, what else does this course offer me? I think you can read through all of those items. You probably have picked up on all of those items already in your research of the courses. I do want to make one specific point here, and this applies to all the subjects, but it definitely applies, and it's applied in financial accounting. In financial accounting, you will see there is no time in your preparation to work through detailed study material. There's no time. You cannot go and spend 6 days on financial instruments. There are not 6 days available. You could do the math. All right? So that was very implicit in our thinking and our prep. So what we've done is we've introduced the concept of a SOAP. S-O-A-P. All right, not the bar soap, not the Dove soap, not the Palmolive soap. Standard on a page. So what we have taken is we've taken every single topic in accounting and we've given you, call it a big picture, or call it a framework, or call it a list. But we've given you the key concepts in that topic. Right. Now this is, I think, important, because what do I think needs to happen? I think if you take a topic, let's use an example here. Let's go to IS 16, guys. The accounting material, IS 16. Let's see if we can get a page number. So in the financial accounting material, IS 16. So just page along until you get to that section of property, plant, and equipment. It's going to be in order. 10. There we go. Okay, so it's page 137 in the accounting section. Page 137 in the financial accounting section. Okay, so that's the section on property, plant, and equipment. And you will see the whole section on PPE is probably not more than 10 pages. It shouldn't be. You don't have time for more than 10 pages. But if you go to page 138, okay, you will see that we have a framework there, which you might have seen before as an illustration or the starting point of the topic, but now this is where this framework becomes more important. Now, how do you approach this? Okay. If you have to look at IS 16, what I think you should be doing is you should be starting off and saying, okay, scope of the standard, right? And you look at that scope of the standard and you say, right, do I have a working, look at the choice of my words, do I have a working knowledge of the scope? Do I have a plan on the scope? So what I'm saying is, do I know what the standard applies to? Do you know what IS 16 applies to? IS 16, that's it. Let's move on. If you need more detail in the exam, where is the scope paragraph? It's in your book. It's in your book. Okay? So you know, all right, this applies to 16. Now, let's move on. The definition. The definition of property, plant, and equipment. Not about the technical. The definition's in your book. What is the significance of this definition? Now you think and you apply your mind. What is the significance of this definition? Okay, then you think, all right, what's the difference between investment property and PPE? What makes something investment property? What makes something PPE? There you go. Intention, use, all those wonderful things. What makes something inventory? What makes something PPE? Am I able to answer that type of question? Do I have a plan? I don't need to know the definition physical. It's in my book. But can I deal with that type of question? You see what I'm trying to do here? This is how you will assess yourself to see if you need to go in further in the detail to go and look at it. All right, let's take the next point. Recognition of an item of PPE. The definition of an asset is there. Okay, that's fine. That stuff there, you should put a tick. I know all of this stuff. I have a working knowledge. I can deal with that information. Then subsequent expenditure on an item of PPE. What do you do with repairs? Do I know how to deal with repairs? Okay, what do I do with repairs? I've got a working knowledge. Repairs are expense, day to day. If it's something like a replacement, what do I do with a replacement? I capitalize a replacement, but simultaneously, what do? I de-recognize the old part. Guys, you're nodding. What does this say to me? Do you see you have the knowledge? Okay? But we have to, I guess, the word we use upstairs, or the word we use in Johannesburg is we have to upskill, or we have to upskill that knowledge. Just get it to speak again. And what we think is going through a standard on a page like this is an opportunity to upscale that knowledge. You take a point and it must mean something in here. If you feel nothing, it is a sign. Okay? If there's no feeling, or maybe there will be that cold feeling or that chill, okay, then that's a sign that maybe some action is required, or it's an unfamiliar concept. But there's no time to go and look at business combinations from scratch. There's no time to go and look at IFRS 9 and all those things from scratch. But there is time to revise. Okay. So this is what, I mean, the board course does not have this thinking. The board course has got study notes. It assumes you've got lots of time. This is a different ball game. Okay. We will talk more about approach in a few minutes' time. Right. Gauteng board course website, that's fine. We don't need to talk too much about that. The lecturing team, okay, familiar faces. So I think you recognize everyone there. Right. Now we need to focus here. The way forward. Your plan of action between today, the 20th of April, and the 19th of June. In fact, it's actually the 18th of June. Because the 19th of June is that action, that plan is decided on already. Okay? So it's between now and the 18th of June. Okay. Now, I think it's a good idea. What I did was, in preparation for this class, I took out this day-to-day planner. Okay? And I guess maybe go to that day-to-day planner or take it out and put it on the side next to the slide. And let me explain to you the thinking behind this way forward. Okay, so day-by-day planner. All right, good. So day-by-day planner sets out essentially what we're working towards. Let's have a look. 19th and 20th of June, right to the end. That's our ITC examination. Approximately 2 months from now. Right. So the structure or the way forward, some form of plan of action. Remember, all of us think differently. Okay, we all think differently. But some guidance is useful. So take it and use it and make it work for you. So in the beginning, we have 4 launch days. So today is the 20th of April, 21, 22, 23, 24. 4 launch days. Okay. Now those 4 launch days, there are a couple of things we want you to do? The first thing we want you to do, number one, and I'm going to go through this list point by point because I want to talk about each one. We want you to, point number one, we want you to download your ITC, the ITC exam, the question and the solution. It's either on SAICA's website, it is on SAICA's website, and it's uploaded on myself as well. Okay? We want you to download it, and we are suggesting as a first prize to do rewrite, self-assess, and revise. We've allocated 4 days for that, hence that's what we were thinking, 4 papers, paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, paper 4. Okay. Now, you probably are sitting here and saying, what is the objective? Why must I do this if I have not even studied yet? Okay, think about that logic, because it's true. You have not studied yet. Why must I do this if I have not studied yet? Okay, let me give you a couple of things I think we want to achieve here. The first thing is, it's approximately 3 months later than what you had written this exam. We want to try and show you that even though it's 3 months later, you still can perform to a level, firstly, in that exam. Okay? The second thing is, we need you at your peak. So we need you to be familiar with these questions, because central to this course is going to be, when the auditing guys come in, they're going to assume that you have that question with you, that you have it ready. If they start talking about the different issues, they're going to assume that that's close to you, that you've done this. Okay? It is also important to do it under no time pressure. We don't think you should do it under time pressure. Now, that's also an interesting dynamic to see what happens if you take away time pressure. How do you do in those questions? And why? And then to try and understand why, when time pressure comes in, why does it change the dynamic? It shouldn't. I mean, if you know your work, you know your work. You cannot allow things like time to come in and stress you out. So we need to try and understand that. We want you to understand your weaknesses. See where you went wrong. Okay? See where you went wrong. So that's why we think it's a good idea for you to download that exam paper and to physically redo that exam paper. Look, you might come up with a slightly different combination and saying, maybe I don't have to redo that exam paper. Maybe I can review it. All right? Do what works for you. I think first prize is to try as best as you can to rewrite it. And we're saying that we've got 4 days to do that, starting tomorrow. Okay. Then, number 2, we saying initiate the process of obtaining your script from SAICA. Hopefully many of you have done that already. You've done it? Okay. It's sometimes quite a daunting task to look at that script again, but do it. Because I think it's, if I just look at the meeting, I use that student as an example that I saw on Thursday, what value she got out of that exercise. I know, and I discussed this with her, it was daunting for her to look at that test, that exam paper, but she got a lot of value out of it, looking carefully at what she had written. But we also want you to bring those to the class, the lectures from 20th April onwards, because we will be talking about that specifically. In the financial accounting, I'll be talking about, right, let's go to part A, okay? Right, this is part A, and line by line to say, this is what candidates did. This is what a candidate that got a number 1 position, this is what they did. This is why they did it the way they did it. This is what a candidate passed it line by line to go through that. So in order to do that, it's a good idea to have your script next to you so that you can compare line by line with us as we work through that paper. Then number 3, this is still in the 4 launch days. We want you to complete a gap analysis for each subject. Okay. So, what's a gap analysis? Let's use an example. Let's go back to the financial accounting, the intro section to the financial accounting. So the first document. On page 3 of that document, you will see a table with a ranking 1 to 5. All right? Okay. Now, this is the gap analysis. So, let's have a look and see what are the different ratings. That's on the bottom of page 2. Number 1 is, I feel that I completely understand this specific topic and remember the issue well. Be honest with yourself. Okay? And I think you will have a couple of those. I completely understand this topic. IS-10. Events after the reporting period. What is there? I mean, it's IS-10. Events after the reporting period. Okay? Number 2, the second one. I feel that I understand this topic and its issues, but would like to go back and refresh my knowledge. Right. Okay? Number 3, I understand the basics of this topic, but I'm rusty on the specifics and the detailed technical aspects of it. That's natural. That will happen. Okay? Because 2 months have lapsed. Number 4 and number 5. Okay? Number 4 and number 5. Number 4, I feel that I do not know or have forgotten a lot of what this topic's about. And number 5, I do not know anything about this topic. I included number 4 and number 5 in this list. But I'll be very surprised if you should be using number 4 and number 5. For a couple of reasons. Understand where you are now. You have done CTA. You have done undergrad. CTA. You have prepared for the board exam. You cannot say to me that you do not understand financial instruments. I'm not going to buy that. Okay? I'm not going to buy that just like that. So, and I know Dewald, the financial management presenter, we had a long chat about this, whether there should be candidates on 4 and 5. And our sense of this is that if you've done all of that preparation, we don't think there should be too many 4s and 5s. We think that there's probably going to be 5 or 6 topics per subject that's going to require some priority attention. Okay, that you're going to have to give it a little bit more nurturing and care and love and attention. Right? But it can't be the whole subject. It can't be the whole discipline. It cannot disappear just like that. Right. So we say it's a good idea. Now this is what we want you to do. We want you to go through that ranking, that gap analysis, and go and rank yourself honestly. It's going to be a tough exercise to do. But rank yourself honestly, then identify those 5 or 6 topics we reckon that need attention. And then what we've done is that we then have allocated specific days, and we'll get to those days on that study program when we think that you can attend to those topics. Remember, just a point I want to make, if you identify something like financial instruments, and let's say you've been really harsh with yourself and you say you're a 5 for FI. Just to make that point again, you then need 6 days to fix up FI. You don't have 6 days. It's not making sense that one would be on a 4 or a 5, especially when you've come this far. There must be knowledge There is knowledge already in place. All right. So let me find my day-by-day planner. So we've now done our 4 launch days. Let's proceed. Now we get to the study days and the contact sessions. Okay, study days and the contact sessions. On the day-by-day planner, you will always find that there are 2 study days before the actual contact session. So let's take the contact session for financial accounting, 18th of May in Durban. All right, that's Saturday. So that's when we will meet the next time and greet for what we call lecture 1 and lecture 2. But if you look upwards on the timetable, you will see that we've allocated 2 financial accounting days. I see one on the 28th of April, study day 1 for financial accounting, and the 1st of May 2013, study day 2 for financial accounting. Okay, so in those 2 study days for financial accounting, we have the detail in the intro module for financial accounting. But what we're saying is, there we think that you need to already start addressing the issues in the gap analysis, naturally. You guys with me? Okay? So those topics, those 5 or 6 topics, already by then you have identified them, and you are now tackling those topics, those 5 or 6 topics. Okay. So that when you come to the class in accounting, financial accounting on the 18th of May, you have already done 2 study days worth of work, and you now bring your scripts obtained from SAICA, like I said, together with your attempt to the contact session. All right. You'll need to go in the launch days and go and look at the intro documents as well of each of the subjects, right? I'm using financial accounting as the example. But you'll need to just go and look carefully what are the things that you will need to do at the different dates and different times. The thing is, we're going to expect you to have done this. Because this is a conduit, because this is 2 months, there's only 2 months. I think this is becoming clear here. There's no time for lagging, I guess, if we can use that term. We're going to have to work smart, we're going to have to work together, and we're going to do it. All right. So typically, for that first contact session in accounting on the 18th of May, lecture 1 and lecture 2, there we are going to do paper 4 in detail. Okay? And remember, I'm going to do that question. So that's the question that was marked in umpires, so we can give direct feedback on that question. We'll then also use the opportunity to prepare another question. And we, in the file, in the financial accounting, say specifically which question we want you to prepare for that afternoon session on the 18th of May. All right, so please just refer to the subject material for guidance on what you need to do in each of those, prepare for each of those contact sessions. Right, then just maybe to talk about the subject study days. There are 8 study days for each subject except for financial accounting, which has 10. Why does financial accounting have 10 and not 8? Is it because it's more important? No. Okay. Once again, importance is a relative term. Yes, financial accounting is counting now 100 to 120 marks, 25% of the paper. So it does carry a bigger weighting, but that weighting does not imply that it's more important. We've seen it this year. You cannot pass the question just on financial accounting. You had to have the tax in place, had to have the strategy in place, had to have the governance in place, auditing and the math. Okay? Had to have all of those in place. So there is a balancing exercise between volume and importance. Balancing your volume and importance. Right. So in financial accounting, we do have the 10 study days. So let's just quickly identify those. I know it's a little bit tedious, but we're all motivated and excited here. So we've identified study day 1 and study day 2. Study day 3 I see on the 19th of May for financial accounting, 4 the 20th of May, and study day 5 the 21st of May, and this is on the Durban planner. Okay, you guys see that. Then study day 6, if you go down to the 2nd of June, I see a small typing error on this Durban planner. The first column says accounting study day 6. The second column is a little bit confusing because that says study day tax. You see that? Okay, so just maybe correct that. I think all 4 of those down at 5 of those, 6, 7. All 7 of those are just the wrong annotation. Okay, so there's the study day 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That takes you up to the 9th of June. Right. So, again, each subject is going to tell you specifically what we want you to do in those days. Right. The last 10 days. Now, if you go to this day-by-day planner and you count the days, it's not 10 days. 10th of June, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 days. All right? So 8 days, it is plus 1 rest. Are you going to rest? Ma'am, are you going to rest? Yes, you're going to rest. Okay, that was not the initial answer you were going to give me, right? You are going to rest. You need to rest. Can't be exhausted. Can't be exhausted. The day you write the board exam cannot be the first day of rest. The 19th of June can't be the day that you're resting. Right? I think you need to rest on the 18th, so you need to rest on the 18th. But that means you have 8 study days. Now, in our minds, and I hope it is indeed like this practically, I think we've been suggesting that it must be like this practically, that the 10th of June to the 17th of June are full study days, meaning that there's study leave involved. So that would mean 8 days of study leave in our assumption. I guess the point I'm trying to make is I think there has to be some form of study leave. A lot of guys have been asking how many days study leave, etc. That's the sense we're getting. Which then, if we work backwards, the previous days were then under the assumption that those were working days, and you were preparing simultaneously with work. So from the 10th of June onwards, you could then do some solid studying. You've got full days, and now, in that period, this is the crux period. That is the time when you're going to make the difference. What do we think you should be doing in those 8 days? We think you should be writing a paper a day. 100 marks every single day. Okay? Now, where are you going to get the first 200 mark papers, day 1 and day 2? Or put differently, 10th of June and 11th of June. We'll help you. We've got those 2 practice papers we'll put together, 100 marks each. Okay, so you've covered already for the first 2 days. Then, when you get to day 3 or the 12th of June, right, now you need to put together, or now you need a 100 mark paper. What we've done in the material is we've said go and do these questions in the initial study period, the first period, and leave these questions for that next period. What we want you to do is to mix the questions. So take a financial accounting 60 marker, mix it with a tax of 40 marker. Make a 100 mark paper. Alright? And we want you to write, again, make that point, write that 100-mark paper every single day. Right. What should your day look like? One day. Yes, writing that 100-mark paper is going to take 3 hours. You know that. Okay, from start to end. How long is it going to take to self-assess? Look at that time. Not 15 minutes. Alright, this is tough. Not 15 minutes. 3 hours. Just as long as it took to write, it takes to self-assess. So you write in the morning, 8 to 11. You then go and have your snack, eat your sandwich, right? Then you self-assess or you mark yourself, and that you expect will take 3 hours. So 12, 1, 2, 3. And then a balanced day. In the afternoon, evening, you've got that 3-4 hours that you could divide for technical, upscale on the technical. Okay, so trying to balance this out. So that's just to give you some structure for those 8 days. Look, you might have a model that can work differently and that works for you. Do it, but this is what someone said to me. How would you do this? This is how I would, or this is how we would prescribe or say we would respond to that question and say we would do it like this. All right, good. I guess this is quite unique, so if you have any questions, guys, please, during the breaks, when we take the next break, but just shout if you, just come and talk to me at some stage. If you have any questions, we can try and see if we can answer those. All right, you do have another challenge, and that is studying whilst working, especially in those first couple of days. All right, and that's not easy. I think you already have a sense. You've thought about it already. It requires discipline. My colleague Dewald puts it like this, or he puts it in a way. He says, when you're studying, it always seems to be fun to work late at the office. Seems to be, you look for all these wonderful reasons of working late, or, yeah, no, I'm working overtime at the moment. Sarah, can you work late? Yes, I'll do it. Okay, with pleasure, right? But what's in the back of your mind the whole time? That's conscience. That's the snag. I think the human psychology is like that. If you do what you like to do, you do more and more and more of that. And what you don't like to do, you seem to build what's the word? Not much of an affection for that. So it requires discipline. And what is that discipline? The best examples of discipline we've seen is someone that kicks it in early in the morning. All right? Get it out of the way. Realistically, I mean, on a day that you're working, what is the realistic amount of hours that you can get in on that day for studying? Let's hear. Sir? 3 hours. Realistically? 2 hours? Okay. Sir? For the fire? 3. Yeah, ma'am, you? 3. I think realistically, guys, you're spot on. You're being realistic here. Alright? Between 2 hours, hour and a half, and 3 hours, somewhere in there. That's what you can get in. And that's what you have to work with. So don't set yourself up for 5 hours. You're not going to get 5 hours. But that 3 hours is realistic if you take it one step further. If you keep it hanging in the sky, and like, okay, it was somewhere like 5 p.m. to about 10 p.m., somewhere there. It's going to be just as flexible as it is what we just said now. It's going to be applied flexibly. All right? So if you said 3 hours, but I'm going to lock in that first hour before I get to the office, 6:30 to 7:30 or 7:30 to 8:30. Okay? Lock in that first hour, half an hour, you've banked it. It actually gives you, I think it might just it will motivate you. You'll say, yes, I've done 33% of my plan for the day. Now I just need to do the 66.6%. So you do need to have discipline. You need to get into routine. You don't have a lot of time. Like we've spoken a lot about optimizing the scarce resource. Start studying. Okay, and I say this again. I can't see that you're going to have a lot of 4s and 5s on your schedule. You cannot afford to spend 6 or 7 days on that financial instruments. You need to move forward. You need to get to doing questions. Do you see that's the outcome here? If you look at the timetable, it's about getting to the questions. Are there enough questions in the file? Believe me, there's more than enough questions in the file. All right. Principle-based studying, this is not a foreign concept to you. I don't want to go into the detail here, but what I do want to say to you is that working off existing knowledge is always easier than starting from scratch. Do you understand what I'm trying to say there? Okay. You've got notes, you've got materials, you've got the soaps to guide you. Take yourself further than starting from a zero base. It's not making sense. So you've already done a lot of these principles. This should not be the first time you've heard it. You've summarized concepts before. You've summarized principles before. Take those things that you have already and move one step further. Refresh them, renew them, rejuvenate them. Get that working knowledge, working understanding of the issues, and do that as quick as you can so that you can get to the questions. All right. Doing questions and exam technique, I'm not going to go into the details of this slide now, because this I expect each subject to do. And it's also things that you've heard before. It's nice theoretically to see it on a page, but applying it is a different story. So I expect each subject to talk about it, so we will not go into that into detail. All right, the slide on effective and efficient communication. 21 marks in the ITC of January. 21. 6%. It can be as much as 40 marks. Okay? So, let me give you a couple of examples here where candidates did not score the marks. Number 1. Okay, and you might want to write these down. Go and look at your journal entries. When you're going and you're looking at your exam paper and you're going and you're rewriting that exam paper, go and look at your journal entries. Right. What are the things that must be present when you do a journal entry? Dates. Okay? Good. But if you're doing them pro forma, you don't have dates. But if you are doing a foreign exchange question, dates. Right? Good. Let's hear some more stuff. Journal entries. Sir, for the fire. Account descriptions. You cannot debit P&L and credit BS. You have to debit depreciation and credit accumulated depreciation. Okay, good. All right, I'm going to go down. Give every TI a chance here to speak. Sure. Journal entries. Amount. Yeah, there must be. Okay. All right. Now we know about the amount. Let's take it further. What else must be there? Narrations. By default, journal entries must have narrations. Okay, that girl that came to see me on Thursday, she opened up the paper. She had it there. She said, Ahmed, I didn't do well in this section. I said, I can see. And I said to her, where are your narrations? She was blind to it. Where are your narrations? She said, what do you mean where are my narrations? They're there. We looked, there were no journal narrations. All right? Now, what we did then immediately was we pulled a piece of paper out. I pulled out a paper from my printer and I wrote on the top there, things I will not forget for my June ITC. And I said, put this in your study file, the first page. That day when you're resting, before you rest, that 18th of June, just before you go roost or rest, right? Sign off on that page. Just sign off on that page. That's the page I'll allow you to take you in your car as well to the venue. Don't take it into the venue, but take it in your car just before you leave your door. You think you just go down the road. Right, so there were no journal narrations. Then, what else? What are the other creepy things when it comes to journal entries? Debit, deferred tax, credit, deferred tax. Okay? Yeah. Journal entries must balance. A pro forma journal entry. Okay? The main elimination journal entry. Guys go debit, share capital, 100. Credit investment, 120. And then there's nothing in between. That's the journal. Okay? Journals are supposed to balance. Sometimes we say, like if it's, sometimes maybe get it down, don't worry about balancing. But, I mean, if it's like pro forma, it's supposed to balance. Okay. So, journal entries, you have to be careful with those. Sometimes people say, how long must my journal narration be? Must it be long? I said it must be there. Okay, it must be there. So what is my message clear? It must be there. It doesn't have to be 3 pages. It doesn't have to be underlined. You get some guys that go ultimate, they underline each journal entry. It doesn't have columns. All those beautiful things are there, columns, but there's no journals. The guy ran out of time. Okay? So, I mean, practice these things, but it must be there. Certain things must be there. Alright, that's journal entries. Now let's move on to the next one. Contradictory statements or arguments. Contradictory statements or arguments. Okay. So, in the financial accounting, you conclude that the company does not have power over the subsidiaries. You conclude the company does not have power over the subsidiaries. But good exam technique, you continue with that controlled definition and you test for returns and you test for linkage. That's good. When you get to your final conclusion, we always say that mark is for Mala. Yeah, it's for concluding appropriately. If you concluded you did not have power on the top there, now all of a sudden you get control. You conclude you do control it. That's a conflicting argument. You see. Alright? So, there needs to be, that's what logic means, and that's what, that argument must not be conflicting. It needs to flow. It's a bit like the person that, another example, it's the person that is the recognition and measurement of the joint arrangement. They conclude that it's a joint venture. Remember, there are 2 types of joint arrangements, JO and a JV. They conclude it's a joint venture, the V. But then they suggest the wrong measurement. A joint venture needs to be equity accounted, but they say it must be proportionately consolidated. Now the problem there is it's not consistent. You'll see on the solutions they marked it consequential as long as it was the right measurement for the right identification. You cannot say JV, proportionate consolidation. JO, proportionate consolidation or line by line. JV, equity accounting. So contradictory statements and arguments, I found that to be one of the biggest issues this year. And I think I think one of the reasons why we end up with contradictory statements or arguments is because candidates are doing planning while they are writing. Your attempt as you are writing is your plan. So as you're going along, you're kind of going, you're planning, and you're writing as you're going along. And when you sort of realize where this thing is going off track, you bring it back in again. Right? I said to someone the other day, if I said to you, you need to drive from Durban to Uppington at 12 o'clock. Sir, you need to go from here to Uppington at 12 o'clock. What would you do? Give me the things that you would do from now to 12 o'clock. List them for me. Do you know where Uppington is, just by the way? Do you know how to get there? Okay, good. Give me the list of activities that you would do. And let's assume you did not have a GPS. Right? And? Yeah? Right. Why are you doing that? Why? What happens if you don't? Will you get eventually to Uppington? Yes. But what will happen? You won't be on time. So what do you do before you leave at 12 o'clock? You plan. And you plan and you get those directions so that you get there on time. Now, that analogy, you see, you guys, many of you are doing the second one. You're planning as you're driving. So what you're doing is that you stop. When you get that exam paper, you stop. It's like you left Durban now. You stop at the first gas station at BP outside Maritzburg, just before Maritzburg, the one on the top of the hill. You stop there, you pull up, and you say to the guy, Uppington. He says, I don't know now, what's Uppington? Okay? He says, no, go back to Durban. Right? What do? You don't go back to Durban, but you sit there and you think, now which way do I go? Time is ticking. Okay, we're using an analogy here. Anyway, you then get in the car and you carry on driving. You get to Maritzburg, you pull off on Church Street. The roadworks are stopping you up there. Okay? The time is ticking. Anyway, you pull off on the side there and you ask another guy. Indian guy comes walking past. Where you want to go, Matt? Where you want to go? Right? Anyway, you tell him you want to go to Uppington. He says, my bra is in Uppington. Now he starts getting distracted. You know where we're going with this story. The point I'm trying to say to you is that naturally in life, we do this all the time. But when it comes to the exam, we do something unusual. You just start writing. Don't you? I think you start writing before you're ready to write. Before you have that clear plan, before you have that clear direction. What should that plan look like? The gentleman has clarity in his mind what he's looking for if he has to go to Uppington. Maybe you're not so clear what you're looking for to answer that question on control. What you are looking for is the key things to meet control. So what are those key things? Your plan needs to have power, returns, linkage. This is your plan before you set out and before you start picking up your pen. Under power, what do you see? Existing rights, relevant activities. Okay? Right. That's just a framework. Now I take it one step further. Planning also means planning forward. There's certain assumptions in the gentleman's plan to get you to Uppington. Next to the directions, if you've gone to Google Maps, there's certain targets. It's already applied. It says 23 kilometers, 15 minutes. It's been applied. You can't just have the theory that says power existing rights. You need to take that in your planning one step further. What are my existing rights? Do I have existing rights? Put a tick, put an X. That's planning. Planning the entire journey from the zero blank page to concluding. Once you've got clarity on that, then you execute. You answer. Okay? Some of the people that have come out top 10 in the board exam will tell you a stat. They say they spend 60% of their time planning and 40% of their time driving, meaning writing. Okay? It's a bit like, I see this often, I go often to Home Affairs. And you see at Home Affairs, lots and lots and lots of people just standing in lines. The whole day, a guy takes an entire day out of his diary to stand at the Home Affairs. He stands for 2 hours at the information counter for a form. Another 3 hours somewhere else. And we sit back and we say, could you have done this more effectively? You could have called, you could have done all of that and come just for 2 hours to Home Affairs and done everything you had to do. Alright? So that planning for me is you can see where you're going with this. I've got to such a point where if I cannot see where it's going, I know if I commit to paper, I'm scared because it's going to be a half-hearted attempt. I think you need to see the transaction through in your planning before you can actually commit entirely to that. And if you see the transaction through, are you going to get contradictory arguments? No, because you thought about that before you got to the paper, before you put pen to paper. You thought about, it's a bit like the other day, I was looking for directions, but I didn't go to Google Maps. I went straight to the place's website and there were directions there. Okay? And they gave me the directions, and then at the bottom there was a caveat. If your GPS takes you on a gravel road, turn around. Okay? You should not be taken on a gravel road. That is the wrong road. What has that done? You can see the planning. All of the planning has taken place. It's given me the scenarios, it's given me the thinking. So planning helps you to identify these contradictory statements. Alright, let's move on to another one. The question says, prepare a memorandum. Now this is the age-old thing. It said this here, prepare a memorandum. Guys, a memorandum needs to look like a memorandum. Somebody came to me the other day and said, I didn't get my mark for my memorandum. I looked at it and I said, this doesn't look like a memorandum. This is a letter. If they wanted you to do a letter, prepare a letter. What did they say? Prepare a memorandum. They want it to look like a memorandum. Okay, memorandum format. Logical argument. Logical argument. Okay. What's logical argument? You're proving that something should be recognized as an intangible asset. People do the recognition criteria of the intangible asset first before they apply the definition. What's the logic in accounting? What comes first? Definition, then the recognition. People discuss the measurement of the item before they've recognized it. You know why they do that? That's called survival. No planning. But if you've got a plan in your mind, you would know the order of the items. Okay? So, they're marks for having logical arguments. Marks are not there for language. Let me make that clear as well. I get a lot of guys that come and say, but English is not my first language. Gujarati is. Okay? Or Hindi, or whatever it is. Alright? I'm teasing you guys. We're in Durban, so obviously I can tease you with Gujarati and Hindi. It could be Urdu, it could be Arabic, whatever it is. It's not about the language. It's not about the communication of the language. It's about, doesn't matter what language you speak, some of the best professors, international professors from Japan and from China, not the language, the way they argue that point. Logical arguments. Okay, you can see the order of the arguments. The flow is right. So that's very important as well. I'm giving you some high-level things here because we are going to get into the details when we go into the individual sessions. Okay, good. So effective and efficient communication is there for a reason. Strategy, risk management, and governance. So you saw this in the ITC. Okay. Where was it in the ITC? Strategy, risk management, and governance. There was, if we quickly just brainstorm, there was a 25 marks on the PIC scores. That small 25-mark question. You guys remember that? PIC scores, Companies Act. It was, I think, day one. It was paper one. It was paper one. Because paper one was the auditing. It was paper one, the second question. But that was more Companies Act. So I'd say, well, that is governance. Companies Act is governance. All right? So it was there. It was in the 45 marks, a transport question. That was the King and reportable irregularity stuff. It was there. There was some strategy in financial management. But what we have done, and what the conclusion we've come to in Johannesburg, is that it's still business as usual. Strategy, risk management, and governance. You've been doing it. You've been doing Companies Act. You've been doing King. Okay? This is not something to get specifically addressed, specifically stressed out about. We've been doing it, and it's covered. So it's not something, a new area that I think you need to say, I need to upskill. I don't have the skills. You have the skills. You know King. You know the Companies Act. You know all of those things. You have this knowledge. It's about applying it. All right. Okay. So, where are we now? We are at the section of subject-specific exam techniques. So, we are going to deal with this in more detail in each individual subject. Okay? But what we did was we summarized some of the high-level concepts on the next 3 or 4 slides. And I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about 3 of them, so 3 of the subjects, financial accounting, auditing, and math. And then I'll leave tax to the tax people. But we're going to talk about this in more detail, obviously. That's why we have the context sessions when we get there. Right, so what do we have here? So financial accounting. Now what we've done with financial accounting, just at a very, very high level, is we've said there are 2 main types, I guess, of questions in financial accounting. There might be more, actually. I mean, you can get journal entries, all those wonderful things. We spoke about this. But we used 2 examples. Theory question. When you're answering a theory question and you are doing your planning, we did it implicitly. We knew what the headings were in control. Power, returns, linkage. We knew what the headings were underneath power. Existing rights, relevant activities. We had that. Okay? That's why it was easy, in my example, to now take it one step further. The point is, you need to have that. You need to have that protocol. So, we call it a map. You need a map. You need to know what are those, how do you prove control? You need to know how do you meet the definition of an asset. You need to know how do you prove an intangible asset. Okay, now I know you have these maps, but you need to have clear maps of them. So for example, how do you prove revenue? What's the model to follow to discuss the recognition of revenue? And then I've given you an example. Revenue. IS 18. Before you can recognize and measure revenue, you need to identify the components in that transaction. Do you agree with me? Okay? So what's your framework? Your framework says substance. What is the substance of the transaction? One contract, but 3 or 4 components. Identify, this is my planning, substance. Identify the different components. Once I've identified the different components, I then go to the next level, recognition criteria per component. That's it. Some are general, some are specific. Okay? Once I've basically concluded on the recognition of each individual component, then I can discuss the measurement. That is the map, that is the framework, that is the protocol. And I think when you see certain topics, those frameworks need to come up in your mind in accounting. That is a critical success factor. When you see control, the guys that did well in the control question or semi-well had a framework that came up in their mind. If nothing came up, then that indicates that that step has not been completed. See, I think you need to take that step forward to get that clarity in your mind. Let's practice it with another example. If I tell you, discuss the recognition of this lease arrangement. Recognition and initial measurement of the lease. What framework comes in your mind? Start off from the top. Is it a lease? Would that be on the top there? Is it a lease? No, because I said to you, discuss the recognition and measurement of the lease. I said to you, it's a lease already. Okay, so what's the next thing you need to do? What will be the next thing? If it's a lease, then what's the next issue? What type of lease is it? That's it. Okay? What type of lease is it? Right. Now when you're dealing with what type of lease is it, we're still talking about protocol. How do you prove something is an operating lease? You disprove finance. That's the protocol. Okay? Can you discuss the measurement of a lease if you have not classified it? No. Yet some of you jump straight into the measurement. Okay? Measurement right at the bottom, initial measurement. Why? Because the initial measurement of an operating lease is completely different to the initial measurement of a finance lease. That's the protocol in accounting. That is how it works. Right. Another example. I-37. How do we prove something is a contingent liability? It's on the board. You disprove a provision. Okay? To prove something is a contingent liability, you disprove a provision. So that means that if you get a question, discuss whether this thing is a contingent liability. You start off with the definition of a provision and you disprove the definition of a provision to get to a contingent liability. We would expect to see the definition and the recognition criteria of a provision, because that would be the starting point, that would be the protocol. Okay? Do you see what I'm trying to say here? You have the knowledge, but it's about the protocol. Are you reading the signals? Are you getting those signals from the questions, the protocol? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? You have the knowledge, but it's about understanding the protocol that you need to follow to answer that question. Understanding the approach, the starting point. I mean, let me use another example. If we can use the example that was in the ICC, in the accounting question. Discuss the recognition and measurement of the contract. Okay? Discuss the recognition and measurement of the contract, or it was actually more specific, an investment in a particular entity. Now, immediately, when you're doing your protocol, when you're doing your planning, you say, whoa, whoa. It doesn't say discuss the recognition and measurement of the joint arrangement. No, no, no. It says discuss the recognition and measurement of the investment. So what's my first point I need to do? Identification. That's it. What is it? The arrangement between the two parties constitutes a joint arrangement. Okay? Is it a joint arrangement? Now that you're in joint arrangement, you need to prove what is a joint arrangement. It's a contractually agreed sharing of control. So now you need control and you need contractually. So you need a contract and you need sharing. Three things. You need to show that those three things exist. Right. This is like the protocol. Using that term again. Protocol. So write down the map and apply to the information of the question. I think this is important in your planning. Okay, this is your planning. And once you then can see where this is going, you can then execute your plan and articulate the full story going forward. I think what some of you are doing is you're doing something in between here and you're just writing it down on your paper. And that's why you're writing stuff and you're not scoring marks, because you don't have the protocol. Plan, complete the planning, and then execute. Go and practice this, please, in the questions that you have in your files. Okay, let's look at another one, a long question. I would consider the question that you had in the accounting, the 100 marks, to be a long question. I don't know how many of you realized that this long question was broken up by independent parts. Each part had its own required. Part A to part F, G. That's different to a question, one question, lots of issues, and one required. Prepare the statement of comprehensive income. The approach that you use is different. Okay? The game plan is different. So, let me give you a different question here. Example, an assets question. Prepare a PPE recon. Alright? And the information of the question sets out different issues. Well, or different assets maybe. What we're saying is time management is crucial, and information for each issue will probably be isolated. PPE recon, all the information for office buildings together in the office buildings. All the information on the aircraft in the aircraft. So if that is indeed the case, then does it not make sense to complete the entire issue? Probably does. Okay, probably does. Now, where am I going with this? You see, in this year's board exam, where each part, each required was linked to a separate section, you cannot afford, or you cannot read the entire question to answer that part. You have to make those links and say, oh, it's this part. So you read the entire question in the beginning, and then you zoom and you focus on that part, on that part, on that part, and that part. You need to try and zoom and solve those issues, break them up into parts, into smaller bits and pieces that you can digest. Isn't it about that as well? Digesting and breaking it up into parts and information that you can deal with. I did that with that tax issue in the beginning. The minute I took that issue of the exempt office building out of the problem, everyone saw it was exempt. So isn't that the technique? To break it up into its parts, into manageable parts, so that you can deal with it in a manageable way. I think it definitely is. Right, so I mean, you have to look at the style of the question, but dealing with issue by issue instead of part by part, or dealing with the different parts of a question can aid you, can help you in order to make your time go, or use your time more effectively. All right, let's talk a little bit about auditing, governance and assurance. Not my area of speciality, but we all came from auditing, and there are a couple of points we can share here. My auditing colleagues say the following to me: each section of work has its own unique exam technique. So, when they say you are doing pre-engagement activities, if it's a question on pre-engagement activities, what must come to mind? Okay, more than that. I remember I studied it this way. When I heard and saw pre-engagement activities, I saw those steps. You know which steps I'm talking about? Like 7 steps. That's it. I had that. That was my protocol. It was in my mind. Those were the 7 things. Independence. Independent skills, knowledge, all of those things. That must be there. Okay, that's the clarity, that's the protocol. If you are dealing with risks, what comes to mind? The finger method. Okay, what's the finger method? Not the middle finger. You take your finger and you read through the risk. And when you see, you take your finger and you read through the information, identifying the risks one by one. Okay? And when you identify a risk, it's not good enough to say, just identify the risk without explaining why it's a risk. The risk of lightning. The risk of rain. Why? What's the risk? That's not a risk, the risk of rain. Okay? This morning I was on the plane. And my wife said to me, do you think the plane's going to take off with the bad weather? So I said to her, you're just pulling a risk of rain line on me. The risk of rain is meaningless unless there's a why attached to it. Why? The risk of an earthquake. It needs to have a why next to it in order to make it meaningful. Otherwise, it's just going to be meaningless. And obviously, you then go through, they'll deal with the details. I remember controls and test of controls. Whenever it was controls, things like designing a system. I always learned it as walking through the system, visualizing the system. If you had to design controls for a system, visualizing that system and thinking about what can go wrong along the different stages in that system. Okay, so, but they're going to obviously go through that in more detail. Each subject has their unique technique, unique protocol. I'm using that word protocol. Unique protocol. So make sure you pick up on that unique protocol. When we get to math, and this is excellent example of the protocol. There's some different type of questions. If the question is a decision-making question, should this division of business be closed down? You should immediately visualize a protocol. You should see this is an issue of relevancy. Okay, relevant costing. Should this division be closed down? And take it one step further. Your protocol is then, if this division is closed down, right? Your protocol is then to say, what are the costs saved versus income that is lost. And if the savings exceed the cost, then what do you conclude? You should close it down. Exactly. That's the protocol. Okay. So, finance, if you use another example, capital budgeting. Do you like capital budgeting, sir? Capital investment appraisals. Sorry? Not bad. Do you like capital investment appraisals? Yeah, not bad. Do you like capital investment appraisals? Not if they ask it in the QE. He says not bad. Do you like capital investment appraisals? He says no. Okay, he's not being honest. Yes, do you like capital investment appraisals? It's okay. Why is it okay? Because you have a model that works. You agree? What is that model? The model that works is the table with the years or the months. Okay? And you know in time zero what must go in there in the beginning, the initial investment. Okay? And what must go at the end? You know at the end you must put in the working capital that returns, the proceeds on the sale. You know that the tax must come in there, and you know relevancy must be put in. That is your protocol. That is your plan. You can see it. When you answer the question, you are executing that master plan. The problem comes in when you don't have a plan for those topics. That's why you read that required and say, I don't have a clue what this is about. I don't know what to do. It makes me think of, we had this classic example, and I'm talking a bit off the topic here, but a part 2 financial management question last year, 2012. All the required, I remember I did this exercise, all the required except for one could be tied to a plan, and I knew that's the one that's going to be tough for the candidates. And it was the following required, and I'm going to say to you as well, and I think you're going to say, yo, I don't know what I would have done if I got this required. The required was evaluate the effectiveness of the company's share buyback program. Evaluate the effectiveness of the company's share buyback program. The problem with that required is we don't have a model, or you don't have a model to evaluate effective. How would you consider it to be effective? What are you comparing? And you could clearly see that guys were all over the place. They went nowhere. Right. So you do well. And you can, I'm trying to give you examples here to show you. You do well when you have the protocol. Doesn't that mean that the more protocol you have, the better you will do? So does that work? Yeah, absolutely. Okay? The more protocol you have, the better you will do. How do you acquire that protocol? Not by sitting and looking at the theory. That's not how you acquire the protocol. It's by bridging the gap between the theory and the question. After you've done that question, to walk away from that and say, okay, what do I take out from this? What protocol do I take out? What's the flow? What's the logic? How do I fill this picture so that I can get a picture, a solution, a planned protocol to respond to this type of question? And use examples like the capital investment appraisal, excellent example why people do well. And even if the required is turned, if the required changes from prepare the capital investment appraisal to criticize the capital investment appraisal, okay, do you shake? The answer is no. Why? Because you know what the protocol is. That's why. If you get a decision, if you get a question that says, let's say a relevant costing, should you close down the division? That's when you start shaking sometimes, because you don't have the protocol. It's not clear in your mind. If you have protocols, if you've got this clearance, guys, it helps. Okay, it really, really helps. Valuations. Let's quickly do an exercise in valuations. Ma'am, do you like to get a valuation? Sort of, yeah. Do you like valuations? He likes valuations. Ma'am, do you like valuations? It's okay. Do you like valuations? She says no. She's only one person. Do you like valuations? Oh no. Do you like valuations? No. The point I do want to make though is valuations is also protocol. What is the protocol of valuations? Once again, the structure. That's the protocol. The present value of future cash flows. So when you get the question, you can see the answer. That's your planning. That's the protocol. even if they change the required to criticize the valuation. Do you mind that question? No. If they change the required to discuss other factors the company should take into account before pursuing this, then you run. Okay? Then you run. But there's protocol for that as well. There's protocol for that as well. Core survival. Discuss other factors before, let's say a company has to Hewlett's, Tongaat Hewlett's here. Okay? Let's assume that they're evaluating a capital investment appraisal to acquire the Rainbow Chickens plant as you're going out to Maritzburg. Okay. What are the factors they need to consider? The protocol, there are some standard things that come to mind all the time. Competition. Okay? Right? What is the competition like there? Lots of chicken places around. Expertise. Can Tongaat Hewlett's run a chicken factory? It's a chicken factory, chicken plant. Okay? Farm, chicken farm. Right? Then there is health considerations. There's knowledge. So there's certain protocol that even applies there that you can use to aid you to try and answer that question. You guys see what I'm talking? I'm using this word protocol a lot. You see what I'm trying to get to when I'm saying protocol? There's certain things that guide you. It's the rules of the game. Having that gives you guidance, helps you answer the question. That's why you do better in some questions and you don't do better in others. You do well in questions on provisions. Why? Because you have a protocol. You do well in questions on IFRIC 4. Why? Because you have a protocol. You won't do well if you don't have a protocol. And if you are trying to shoot from the dark. So there is definitely a trick here with having some form of protocol, clarity in your mind how to resolve that particular issue. Okay. I think we've illustrated this with many examples, that it depends on subject to subject, the type of protocol or the unique, what makes the technique that makes each subject specific. The tax guys said that they'll talk about this in more detail. I know they've said for each paragraph of information, and I've seen this applied even in this SQE. When you read paragraph information, don't just limit yourself. Their protocol is, they say, look for VAT, look for normal tax, look for CGT. Okay? In that same piece of information. Think broad. Okay. So look out or be aware of that approach or those issues as far as tax is concerned. Right, so I'm going to leave this for the tax guys when they do come in. We have summarized some of the issues here, but obviously they've got many hours to do it better, so we'll leave it for them. Okay, folks, that takes me then to the end of the formal aspects that I had to attend to in this launch session. We do have time to attend to anything informal, so we can talk about, if you have a question on something, we can talk about that. Right? Let me actually start off with that. Is there any questions that you have that you'd like to ask? Okay, do you know how to obtain your exam paper from SAICA? Okay, so you say you know how to obtain your exam paper, yeah? How do you do it? SAICA's website, www.saica.co.za, right? And you can apply for your exam paper. They're very quick. I think you pay a nominal amount, right? You can apply for it, sir, yes? Your mark is on the exam paper. That's the way in which you can physically work out. So your marks, every question will be accompanied by 2 mark plans. So that's SAICA's marking policy. That 2 mark plans will be reconciled within 2 marks. The mark will be on the mark plan. And I think they also give you a cover sheet, but that gives you a big picture. So the actual marks are on the mark plan. Okay, and study that mark plan very carefully. Do you know where to find the question and the solution? SAICA's website, www.saica.co.za. There's a link, past, you go to SAICA examinations. You click on past exam papers, and it will pull up the exam papers. Jonathan said he'll put them on MyPal as well. You can download the questions, the required, and the solutions. Okay, from MyPal or SAICA's website. What SAICA's done with the presentation marks, the effective and efficient communication, is they've gone and made it clearer now what those marks are awarded for. So many years ago, you just have a 3 there, effective and efficient communication 3. On the marks plan, it now says vocabulary. It says memorandum format. It says logical argument. Take that to heart. If you did not get a mark for logical argument, it means that yours was not logical. Okay? Then you have to ask yourself, how do I make mine logical? I want it to be logical. And go and look at the aspects that I spoke about, some of the points I gave you this morning about logic and contradictory statements and planning. All right. Good. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Okay. The syllabus has not changed. That's it. It's the January ICC syllabus. All right. That is a huge plus. Okay? It's a huge plus. That's why I'm saying from the outset, the knowledge is there. Right? Yes, it's rusty, but it's there. It must be there. Okay. So did you do the board course you haven't done the board course? All right. So what might happen is, I think when you do your gap analysis, you might feel that you're more rusty on some of the topics, which means that you would have to pick up on more topics. I think that's going to be the impact, the quantum. Whereas someone that has just come out of 25 Jan would probably be more familiar. So you're going to pick it up on your gap analysis, and your response to that will be the same response that everyone else would have, but it will be affected by volume, quantum. Okay, cool. Any other questions? Right. So I think you guys understand how this works. Maybe just one more point. Registrations are still open, so if there's guys that are uncertain at the office, if they're not sure what they need to do, or they're uncertain, or they're looking for information, they can contact us. Okay? And they can chat. We can maybe try and guide them, maybe they need information, etc. So they're welcome to contact us if there's someone at the office that's looking for information.